President Biden reveals his $2 trillion infrastructure plan. A basketball legend retires. 15 million vaccines were tossed. Why? And confusion at the southern border. This is the April 2nd report. Welcome to the Brief Newsbrief podcast. I'm your host, Isaac Lopez, and this podcast is presented by The Life Given Radio. Following the report, there will be the brief breakdown where I will further discuss the migrant situation in California's recent curriculum that has people in a tither. Beginning with politics, the U.S. plans to meet in Vienna, Austria with representatives from Europe, China, and Russia to discuss, to identify the issues involved in a mutual return to compliance regarding a nuclear deal. The Biden administration said that they were going to begin holding indirect conversations with Iran, hoping to bring them to the table. Currently, Iran is rejecting any kind of discussion. A new Georgia law makes absentee ballots more difficult to cast their votes. It also cuts the time that voters are allowed to request absentee ballots from 6 to 3 months. The White House revealed its $2 trillion infrastructure and climate plan. The plan, named America's Jobs Plan, seeks to spend an estimated $85 billion on public transport, $174 billion on electric vehicles, and $100 billion on electrical infrastructure. If you'd like to read further about this report, you can follow the link that I have in the research doc to the Washington Post, where they offer an estimate of what will be spent where. The Texas Senate passed legislation on April 1st that would ban mail-in ballot drop boxes. Republicans say that this is a move that ensures election integrity, and Democrats argue that it is voter suppression. On to sports. A new study shows that more people will bike if there are friendlier lanes for biking. Per New York Times, the research published online Monday in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences found that in cities where bike infrastructure was added, cycling had increased up to 48% more than in cities that did not add bike lanes. In response to Georgia's voter laws, President Biden would completely support the Major League Baseball if they decide to pull their All-Star game, which is scheduled to be played in Georgia. He called the law Jim Crow on steroids. North Carolina Tar Heels basketball head coach Roy Williams announced his retirement after 33 seasons in the NCAA. The head coach accrued 903 wins in his time as a head coach and 3 national titles with North Carolina. Williams, at his press conference, said, "In today's times, I should say that I'm not retiring or resigning. I'm opting out. That's the most ridiculous phrase I've ever heard in my life. Why the hell don't you just say, I quit? So I'm old school and can't use those words. But I will tell you that I'm retiring and resigning as the men's basketball coach at Carolina." On to health. CDC updated its travel guidelines recently for vaccinated individuals. It says fully vaccinated travelers are less likely to get and spread COVID-19, but they do encourage travelers to still socially distance, mask up, and wash their hands. A recent study shows that the new Pfizer vaccine is effective against new strains of COVID-19. From USA Today, in a clinical trial with 46,000 people, participants were at least 90% protected from symptomatic COVID-19 for 6 months after receiving a second dose of the Pfizer vaccine. At Johnson & Johnson's Baltimore production facility, a dosage mix-up occurred, ruining those 15 million doses of the COVID vaccine, as mentioned in the introduction. On to culture. Border officials encountered more than 170,000 migrants in March, which is nearly a 70% climb from February, which was previously the highest monthly total since 2006. As I said in the introduction, more on this in the brief breakdown. Nike filed a lawsuit against the company that generated Lil Nas X's Satan shoes, saying that it did not authorize the shoes or the design. A judge acknowledged their complaint by issuing a brief restraining order demanding that the company not fulfill the orders. The California State Board of Education approved guidance to help high schools develop an ethnic studies course. More on this in the brief breakdown. And finally, let's conclude with some good news. Not all is bad in the world. From New York Times, employers added 916,000 jobs in March, up from 416,000 in February, and the most since August, per the Labor Department. And finally, the Wisconsin Supreme Court ruled against Governor Tony Evers' statewide mask mandate. They said that Evers stepped over his bounds of authority. Now that concludes the reporting of the Brief News Brief. If you want to drop a tip, or if you'd be interested in a deeper dive on a story, email me at thebriefnewsbrief@gmail.com. Also, if you want more reporting from other reporters who share a similar vision as myself, check out TLG News, The Life Given News, a site dedicated to reporting in succinct and honest ways. If you're interested in writing for TLG, reach out to me at thebriefnewsbrief@gmail.com. Follow me on the social medias if you want. If you don't want to follow me personally, that's completely fine. Follow The Life Given News on Facebook, The Life Given News on Instagram, and The Life Given Radio on Instagram to stay up to date on all things TLG. In conclusion, for the reporting, remember who the real enemy is. Ephesians 6:12. God bless and have a wonderful Easter. I will speak with you next Friday. Welcome to the Brief Breakdown. I'm glad to have you guys on today. A lot has been going on in the news, and I just want to start there. The news today is messy, and it is very difficult to discern the truth. The first story that I want to look at today in the breakdown is a perfect example of this. The hot topic in the media has been migrants at the border. Go and see for yourself how sloppy it is right now. The ridiculousness ever abounds, and there is a need that is being created. The need for the truth, free from partisan lenses, is becoming ever necessary, and I hope this podcast will provide an answer for that. Democrats and Republicans are salivating over this first story, and it has proven to be something akin to what you would read in a Dr. Seuss book. The goal for the breakdown is to not really give more opinion, but rather to read stories in a way that's free of opinion and free of slant, which is becoming increasingly difficult. In the researching of this particular story, you can get headlines that states so-and-so outraged over what so-and-so said about the situation at the southern border. And it is honestly growing ever ridiculous. This is from the New York Times report. Altogether, border officials, and before we dive in, the point of this is to help you gain a better idea of what is actually going on at the southern border, and to realize that both parties screw up. Okay, with that being said, let's continue. Altogether, border officials encountered more than 170,000 migrants in March, a nearly 70% increase from February and the highest monthly since 2006. Officials advise that the statistics are preliminary and an official count will likely be released next week. More than 18,700 children and teenagers were taken into custody after crossing the border, including at port entries in March, nearly double the roughly 9,450 minors detained in February. Just 3,400 minors crossed in February of last year. Border officials also encountered more than 53,000 migrants traveling as families in March, up from roughly just over 19,000 the prior month. Even as the Biden administration struggles to safely process thousands of minors already held in border detention centers. And this is interesting. The pace of crossings by migrant families is similar to numbers in 2019 when the Trump administration struggled to safely process a surge of Central American families fleeing poverty and persecution. I just want to pause here and say a mess is a mess is a mess. Our foreign policy right now, and especially our border policy, needs to get figured out. Both administrations show that they're struggling to figure out what is going on because a lot of people want into America. And obviously there are avenues for that to take place, but they're both struggling how to approach this. Now, I want to finish with this part of the report, but a majority of the families crossing the border are now being taken into custody and subsequently released into the United States because of restricted capacities in facilities on both sides of the southwest border. according to government documents and Homeland Security officials. To relieve overcrowding in border detention facilities, border agents are now releasing many families at bus stations along the border, including some without full information for their upcoming court appearances, according to officials. Now, that's a problem. If you're tossing people into a new country where they may or may not speak the language, there needs to be direction. It seems like this entire situation is directionless, and this administration, regardless of the previous rules, edicts, how they approach the situation, they have to come up with something to get this mess under control. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from the story. I hope that reading this report from the New York Times, which actually I found helpful, despite, I actually dropped a couple of paragraphs and cut a couple of paragraphs, and you can go and read the entire report in the research document that I always have linked in the show notes. But this really is to just give you a more full picture of what's going on, because it's in everyone's feed, and I wanted to bring and shed more light on it from information that's out there. Speaking of information that's out there, I wanted to read a bit more to you, to enlighten you to the design of this California education bill. The time of the reporting is tight in the Newsbrief, so I wanted to take this opportunity and put it in this spot, this California education bill story, and shed some more light on it. So this is from the news release from the California Department of Education. So this is their words verbatim. I put a couple of their paragraphs from that report are here, and I want to read them to you. This is not to, once again, play gotcha with the media. Too many people are playing that game. I just want to offer a bit more information that may not be out there. So the California State Board of Education today approved guidance to assist local high schools in developing ethnic studies courses, classes that researchers say can improve graduation and college-going rates among all students, and especially teens of color. The vote makes California the first state in the nation to offer a statewide ethnic studies model for educators. The release goes on to say, California students have been telling us for years that they need to see themselves and their stories represented in the classroom. Today's historic action gives schools the opportunity to uplift the histories and voices of marginalized communities in ways that help our state and nation achieve racial justice and creating lasting change, said State Superintendent of Public Instruction Tony Thurmond. He goes on to say, by fostering our understanding of the struggles and achievements of people of color, ethnic studies benefit students of all backgrounds. And that is why today's work is so important. The ethnic studies, the release goes on to say, and this is more the design of this new curriculum. The ethnic studies model curriculum is aimed at empowering students by illuminating the often untold struggles and contributions of Native Americans, African Americans, Latino, Asian Americans in California. The document includes University of California and California State University's approved ethnic studies course outlines and lessons that expand beyond the 4 traditional disciplines of ethnic studies to help local districts tailor a course to meet local student needs. And it is stated very clearly that the use of this curriculum is not mandated. Okay, despite what you may think, I just want to say there's no surprise here. California, for almost centuries, at least a century, has been on the forefront of progressive education. This is nothing new. This is just a further iteration of that principle that California is always trailblazing. Whether you like what they are doing or not is up for you to decide. Now, I hope that you found this further illuminating, that this segment is actually proving to be very beneficial, because what I've been seeing in my time working out the purpose of this podcast and researching current events like crazy compared to what I had done 3 years ago, I'm starting to see that there is a desperate need to make sense of the information out there. There is a wide variety of information available to the public. But right now, there's a lot of confusion, much like in the southern border story. There's a lot of confusion on what is actually going on, okay? And I think that, I hope that the Newsbrief becomes a podcast that you can go to get just the facts, right? And not just the facts, because a lot of people will say that, but the actual story that's going on. There's a cutting room floor that is full of garbage that I think, oh man, that is a really interesting story, and I put in my research. And I dropped, for instance, I think I deleted 5 stories from the news reporting section today because I found that actually does not really matter. That this person coming out is this and such, this person saying how much they're outraged, that's all just pundits speak. And there's a lot more Americans out there than there are pundits in America. And I think the 300 million Americans need more information than they need for more clickbait. And that's how I will end the brief breakdown today. Once again, if you find what you are listening to enjoyable, regardless of the program, please subscribe to the Life Given Radio. So we've got 3 different shows. We are excited to announce that we will have another show on. As the managing editor of the news and radio side of things for TLG, I'm at liberty to say that. I won't tell you more because I don't want to spoil the surprise. And the person that we're bringing on is very passionate about what they want to speak. And it is something that none of the 3 podcasts are covering, and adds in another dimension that is just going to make this network so much better, so much more enjoyable to listen to. It's already really fun, but the more people we add to the team, the better we get, the more things we learn, the better we grow. And it's super exciting. The one thing that you can do to support this project is following on whatever platform and sharing the show, being vocal about what you like, what you dislike. Contact any of our creators on both sides of the coin, whether it's the news or the radio site. Anyway, I will conclude with that. Remember who the real enemy is, and Ephesians 6:12. Have a wonderful Good Friday, and God bless you, and praise the Lord for the life that He has given to us.